There we go. Oh, and here's Erin coming in, I believe. All right, Erin's here now. All right, so we've started recording. This is Willamette Week's endorsement interview for the Multnomah County judge race. We have Adrienne Brown and Rima Gondor. So I think just to start, we can begin with introductions, just who you are, a little bit about your background, why you're running in this race. Keep it to about 2 minutes, maybe 3 if you can. Rima, why don't we start with you?
Sure. My name is Rima Gondor. I'm an experienced attorney, a proud immigrant, and an Arab American, a Muslim, and I'm running for the Multnomah County Circuit Court Judge position. I'm running to make sure that our courts are inclusive, that they are welcoming, and that everyone is heard, everyone is respected, and everyone is treated fairly. As an immigrant, I know the importance of a fair judicial system. We need to restore confidence in our judiciary, and we need to make sure that our courts are safe, they're fair, and everyone in them may seek justice. In my practice and my volunteer work, including assisting at the airports during the Muslim ban, helping dreamers do paperwork necessary to keep them in their status, helping found the Arab American Cultural Center of Oregon, and working within the legal community, I've always looked at the world with an active intersectional lens to improve access to all. I've served as the past president of the Multnomah Bar Association and the Queen's Bench, which is a Multnomah's chapter of the Oregon Women Lawyers. I've co-founded and served as past president of the Arab American Cultural Center of Oregon, and I'm currently serving in the executive committee for the Owen Banner in a court. A lot of the work I've done is on my website, so I'm not going to go into that. And there's 2 reasons that I am running. We are confronting systematic racism, and I've done the work to transform our legal system within to be inclusive and break down barriers to attorneys and others trying to access the legal system. I'm also the one who's done work within Multnomah County, within the courts, within Oregon State courts to both practice and to try to advance equity in those courts. And that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And Adrienne?
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having us, Erin. My name is Adrienne Brown, and I am running to be Multnomah County Circuit Court Judge because I know the value that a judge can have on children, on families, and indeed on our communities. As a child, I was raised by a single mother who was working, and she had to access the court system in order to gain child support. My dad left when I was 3, and my mom was trying to work and provide for my sister and me. And after years of broken promises from my father and maxed out credit cards, which I have memories of my mom cutting up, my mom finally took my dad to court, and then he fought the whole way. And this was in the mid to late 80s, and this was at a time where it really took the courage of a judge to do the right thing for the right reasons. Certainly didn't have to. And because the judge not only awarded support going forward, but actually awarded it in arrears going back, it made a huge impact on my ability to have opportunities that I wouldn't have otherwise had, and indeed is the foundation of why I'm here today. And then I saw also the power of a public servant doing the right thing for the right reasons. And despite that, I still was raised in a working class family, and I took an ROTC scholarship to go to college. As a result of that, I got to spend 7 years in the Air Force trying cases on both the prosecution and the defense side. And the reason why that's so important in bringing forward to the Multnomah County Circuit Court is because these are the exact cases that judges see here. Cases involving sexual abuse of children, physical assault, domestic violence. I even had a maiming case. I had cases involving multiple sexual assault victims. And I also had a case involving fraud. I've had a case involving multiple defense attorneys. And then I also got to serve as a defense counsel as well, doing the same types of work. And in fact, one of the ways I like to provide is a shorthand for people and knowing how important it is to show yourself as a judge, as a human, is that I represented individuals also charged with sexual abuse of children. And so having to prepare children to testify against their own fathers, and then subsequently serving to represent fathers in order to face those allegations is not just a serious and complex measure, but it also requires a degree of humanity. And so I look forward to bringing that experience to bear. And most importantly, for the past 10 years, I have worked as a civil rights coordinator in the District of Oregon. This was a position that didn't exist before I came into the U.S. Attorney's Office. I fought to have that position created, and I also fought to keep it over the past 4 years. One of the most humbling experiences of my life was working on the Portland Police Reform case. And I am proud to say that as a result of that case, I came out with endorsements from community leaders on all sides of that case that still represent their endorsement for me today. People like Dr. Bethel and Dr. Haynes, people like Joanne Hardesty and Abel Gordley and Sharon Myron. And I am proud to bring that experience to bear today. The things that are thrust before our court in these times right now is exactly what my experience brings to bear. System reform on policing practices, mental health issues, housing, and veterans. I look forward to bringing all of that passion from my work in the community as well as my litigation experience to help Multnomah County Circuit Court move the work of the court forward, and indeed, the reform that's much needed. Thank you.
Rima, since Adrian touched on this a little bit, I'm wondering if you can explain a little bit about what your litigation experience is like. Have you been involved in criminal cases as much, or are you more on the civil side, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I'm mostly on the civil, definitely for the last, since I moved to Oregon. Prior to Oregon, I know I've heard rumors that I have zero criminal experience or no criminal experience, and those are not true. I did work as a certified law clerk in the city attorney's office in San Diego, prosecuting domestic violence cases. But other than that, I spent time at the county council in California, where it was a very busy mental health docket that is, we called it a quasi-criminal. Sitting across from the DA every day, trying cases almost, at least once a week, hearings 3 to 4 a day on cases involving mental health. Since that, I've been more of a civil attorney. My connections with the criminal stuff is volunteering with some volunteer work, and also trying to connect people in the community with attorneys when they face issues involving the criminal justice system.
Thanks. And for the next question, we can start with Adrian. What do you view as the biggest difference between yourself and your opponent?
Yes, so there are certainly a lot of similarities between us and our interest in social justice and our interest in bringing about social change that's necessary at this point in time. The main difference is that I have walked the talk for the past 10 years. I have worked on these cases. I have chosen as my profession. Indeed, I crafted the position I currently have in order to make sure that work is done here in Oregon. And indeed, within the past 4 years, I have had to fight to keep it. I worked for 8 years under the Obama Justice Department. And in that time frame, I was tapped by the head of the Civil Rights Division, personally recruited to come and serve as a national civil rights coordinator. And the reason is because of what he saw in my ability to craft the position that I made. I then helped create 30 more positions like that around the country. Today, those positions still exist. Indeed, my colleagues and I, the 30 or so of us that are out there in our little islands, we have a monthly call together to continue to talk about the issues that matter in our communities and to make sure that work is being heard and done in the department to the extent that it can under this administration. So that is an extreme difference. My colleague, my opponent, is doing this in her spare time, and I applaud her for that. I applaud her for the immigration work that she's done. But what requires a circuit court judge is the profession of doing it. And the profession that my colleague and my opponent chose was insurance defense for over 10 years. So I look forward to bringing my passion of this experience to bear and making sure that the work of the court is done not just in a way that is fast, but that is also experienced based upon the work that I've done over the past 10 years, as well as my criminal trial experience involving over 40 felony criminal trials.
Thanks. Rima, I can let you respond to that and answer the same question. I just have a quick follow-up for Adrian regarding the status of civil rights cases at the United States Attorney's Office in Oregon. Is it accepting new civil rights cases right now, or what does that look like?
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. The door is still open as much as I can keep my foot in there and hold it ajar. Yes, I have several new cases. Now, one of the differences is, most of this work, civil rights enforcement work, is done outside of the courtroom, right? It only needs to get to the courtroom when there is really a problem in trying to get the cases resolved. So there are many cases that I've worked on that's not going to show up on the docket. And indeed, I have several open investigations. I just recently got approval to open up another investigation just over the past week. And unfortunately, I can't talk about those cases because they are currently open investigations, but I can talk about the ones that have closed, at least in, without naming names. I can talk about the work I've done, such as we had a school in the past, 4 years that involved a lot of horrible racist graffiti targeting Jewish people, and a teacher had come to us, and we actually took on that case, investigated it, worked with the school to make changes and address the issues outside of court. And that's how a lot of the civil rights work gets done. So we're still open. It certainly doesn't look the same as it did under 8 years of Obama, and there's no denying that, but there's still work being done.
Gotcha. But just to clarify, is your office accepting civil rights complaints?
Absolutely, absolutely. So
website otherwise, that's why I was asking.
Yeah, so what's, yes, I have, that's one of the many projects, is updating that website. So what happened was initially there was a reduction in the staffing we had available to have an intake specialist to do civil rights intake. And so that work, we had a contractor that then we lost. I know this is getting way more into the details than you desire, but yes, that website is not correct, and it needs to be updated. And I do receive calls on a daily basis. I do have a legal assistant that helps me screen those calls, but we don't have a certified intake specialist at this time.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks for clarifying. And Rima, now back to you. The biggest difference between you and your opponent, and you can also respond to some of the comments she made regarding the two of you.
The biggest difference is the walk I do is on my own back. It is work I do for free, but not just for free. It's work that costs me time and money and energy. I didn't wait to create a position to do the work I do. When I first moved to Oregon, I found one of the hardest things was trying to access the legal system. As a person of color, as a woman of color, a mom with a young child, it was so difficult to find a job. It took me such a long time. I did not have the connections. And yes, I did work in insurance defense. And you know why? The person who gave me the first job in Oregon allowed me to be flexible and work from home, to be with my kids. But with that said, I've been on my own for almost 8 years. I run my own firm. I make sure our technology is updated. I make sure our websites are updated. I make sure I meet payroll. I make sure that one of the hardest things to go and step off that stone and go, I'm gonna go by myself. I'm gonna start a business and I'm gonna hope the work comes. And my work includes plaintiff and defense work. That actually goes to the kind of attorney I am. I know I can do cases from both sides, and I do them daily. That way I represent people, I represent small businesses, I represent big businesses. I do all it's sort of an old-fashioned law firm kind of thing. I do all the kind of the work that comes to the office, and I find that work interesting and appealing because I do so many different things. In terms of the work I've done, we can start from high school, but we're not going to go there because I don't think you want to hear all of that. But I have been volunteering my time. Starting the Arab American Culture Center has been a work of love. It has taken hours and days out of my family's life to do it. But that's just one of the things. I have worked with the Oregon. I've received several awards for the work I've done, and it's not just immigration. Actually, I never wanted to be an immigration attorney. I have only been doing this because I see the effect on my community and other communities that are dear to my heart with what is going on. So I've been working within the Oregon State Bar, trying to bring change to a systematic change to what is going on there. I have been trying to increase access for women, for minorities in the legal profession. And again, none of this work, that's a huge difference. This is in addition to my everyday job in having a successful law firm that I've worked and sweated to get there. I also do all of this work because that's where my joy and love comes from. So those are two important things. And the other part is I heard about the work being done outside the courtroom. Well, when you're a judge, the work is done inside the courtroom, and you need to be able to do the cases and judge and know the laws and be somebody who actually practices in the courtroom and specifically in at least the state court. I would not have put my name in for a federal position because, you know, my experience is mostly within the state court, and there's enough differences that it does make a difference. And the ability to go in and start right away, it's important to know the everyday processes of the court. So yes, there is outside court work, but there's also court work. And as a litigator, I think it's important to have a judge who actually is a litigator in the courtroom.
Yeah. I wanted to give each of you the chance to also ask each other a question. So you can ask it to your opponent and make it a question that is of substance, and then the person respond directly to the question without going too far off to a different tangent. Why don't we start with Rima this time? Would you like to ask Adrian a question?
I'd like to know about her last trial.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I have had, like I said, I have worked in the criminal justice system in the 7 years I was in the Air Force, and then the first year I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and then I worked on the civil side. And my civil experience includes a range of cases involving medical malpractice. Actually, I had a medical malpractice case 18 years into my career. And I resolved that case. The trial I had, was a jury trial in front of Judge Brown in 2014, I believe. And it involved the U.S. Postal Service, employment discrimination. And it was about a three-day federal jury trial, which had been extremely litigated, even pre-trial as well. We had had summary judgment. My opposing counsel had changed multiple times during the case, so it involved a lot of issues for one case, for sure.
Great. Adrian, now the other way around, ask Rima a question.
Sure. So Rima and I have known each other for a little while, and I knew Rima from her reputation before I met her, which was very strong, being an advocate and being interested in working on the community issues that she's mentioned. And so, Rima, I can still remember when we first met. I think it was at one of the specialty bar dinners, and we were introduced. And I didn't realize that you worked in private practice and that you did these cases involving a lot of insurance work. And so I was very surprised, actually. I'm just curious as to, I understand what you just said about how that was how you began. You found an employer that was conducive to working from home with kids, and I appreciate that. But I'm just curious as to why you never have chosen to do public service as a professional since you left Orange County.
Well, one of them is I don't feel like working for the US DOJ, frankly. Let's be honest about that. It's not a place right now that I feel is serving our community. On the other hand, doing the work I'm doing, I do, again, when you met me, Adrian, I was doing almost 50-50 plaintiff's work and insurance defense. So I'm not 100% insurance. I've sued plenty of insurance companies, and actually the only reason I can run for this race is because a case I had against farmers that went to the Supreme Court after trial that I ended up winning and getting a nice chunk of money that allows me to pay off my student loans that I had to take during law school when I was raising my sister. And even with a 50% scholarship, still had to take the money to pay it. It's taken me 23 years to pay it, and hooray, yay. So glad it's done. But yeah, so I do the work. My defense work helps keep my plaintiff practice going and helps and allows me as a firm to promote women and minorities and make sure that I provide a platform and a place for people who've been out of work for a long time in the legal business to be able to come back in and get the experience they need. I also do that for some of the lawyers who need to keep some practice going so that they don't lose their skills as they step away from the legal practice. One of the reasons I started the firm was I had seen too many women attorneys and attorneys of color leave the practice of law totally because places were not inclusive, they're not welcoming for them. I saw it myself firsthand when I first came here, and I wanted to provide an alternative. So those are all of the reasons. I don't believe working in government necessarily means you're doing the work or advancing the needle. So that's why I'm doing the work I'm doing from where I am doing it.
And just to follow up, how long have you been in private practice for?
Me?
Yeah.
Since I moved to Oregon in 2000, I said it took me a while, so 2003,
Okay.
2003. So you do the math.
Yeah, and it sounded like you kind of touched on it just now, but I mean, what's your response to people who say that doing private practice for the last 17 years and then jumping to being a judge in a state court is kind of, they're just different? I mean, what's your response to people who bring that up?
Well, being a judge is different than anything any of us have done. And I actually believe it brings great experience because one of the things with the court, it's administration, right? There's, you have to control, you have to deal with your courtroom, but you also, especially right now with what is going on with COVID and pre-COVID, resources to the courts are being cut. So bringing somebody actually who's run their own firm, who went from one person, me, I remember the first employee I hired, I was like so worried about it. Can I meet payroll? Can I keep them employed? Can I keep them busy? But I have learned through the years how to manage resources and how to increase the use of what I have to get the most out of it. When I've had cases, when I first opened my firm, where I couldn't afford to get an expert and my client couldn't get an expert in a med malpractice, we went around and we think outside the box and recruited friends to actually examine my client who was bringing the case forward to try to make it as efficient and as possible for her. So these are all skills that are going to be needed right now in the court. How to manage employees. As a judge, you are going to have staff working for you. So the way you treat them and what you do with them is really important. And again, none of us have been judges. This is an open seat, so there's no incumbent. So the part of being a judge itself is going to be very different. But again, my work and my work in the courts and knowing what the courts, especially Multnomah County, goes through and how busy of a docket is. And frankly, my work, I handle 30 to 40 cases at any given moment. My phone is off the hook, my email, I get 200 to 300 emails every single day. I run a very busy practice and I can keep up and bring that energy and that passion to the court.
Thanks. Adrian, I'll give the last word to you on this, then we'll wrap it up. How do you feel about the transition from working for the U.S. Attorney's Office, then moving to Multnomah County? I mean, how do you feel that you're suited to do that?
Sure. Yes, I am very excited to do it. And like anything, there is always a learning curve. I will say that the experience that I bring will suit me to do the work of the court from day one. And that is because not just from my criminal experience and handling complex criminal trials and knowing the federal rules and the state rules and the military rules of evidence. I mean, I've used multiple jurisdictions in my practice in order to be where I'm at. And I also will say that there's only one of us here who has held the Portland Police accountable, and that's me. And that's kind of stuff we're going to see before this court every day, is what is happening with the police. You know, there's one thing that Mike Schmidt and Ethan Knight have in common, and that is that they're both endorsing me, that I should be a judge. And that is because I bring to bear the ability to not only hold people accountable, but to also understand the need to bring in law enforcement. I have also worked with community advocacy organizations and nonprofits. Those are also voices to be heard. My opponent mentioned earlier that the work of the court is in the courtroom, and that is absolutely true from 8 to 5. But beyond that, there are so much things that can be done. People view the role of a judge very narrowly. And indeed, I have seen through the policing case, a judge to be able to bring in community, to work outside of the courtroom, to demand that community voices are heard. And I believe that is incredibly important in this time. And it's not just important, but it's work I've done. I have actually brought forward in at least 2 cases, fairness hearings where we've brought in, these are complex class action cases where we've brought in community members to be heard. And I've gone out to find those community members and talk to them one-on-one about what's happening. And so I look forward to using my role to not only do the work of the court from 8 to 5, but then to go beyond that and work with making sure that every other stakeholder also knows the work of the court. And we also know what we can do in order to make it more accessible. To be out in the community asking those questions is one of the key takeaways I have learned from my reform work. It's not a one-off, it's something you do over and over and over again. This has to be an evolution, and our system is ready for change, and I am ready to bring it.
Can I address that, or are we done very quick?
Oh, yeah, you can address it. It's okay, because we started a little late. So
yeah, I think the verdict is out on police accountability and what is going on. So let's make sure that is on the record. In terms of work, I have, Ms. Brown is talking about working with nonprofits. This is something that I have been doing. I've received I helped the Muslim Education Trust build their center. I received an award for that work, and that was way, way before I ever thought I would ever put my name in for a judicial position. I have been working with the Oregon State Bar. I have been working with other organizations from 2006 onwards, again, when a judicial position was not something I was thinking of. In terms of being out in the community, as I said, other than my practice, I spend 10 to 20 hours every single day. Week. What we've done through COVID, and this is through my work with different communities, and you can look at the endorsements and see what community leaders have endorsed. We have been preparing food packages that are culturally appropriate, taking them to where the need is in different communities. I have been doing PSAs because, especially in the beginning, before they were translated into languages other than English, or the governor's orders and the court's orders were not being translated. I made sure to do PSAs. And this is, you know, it's really important to have representation and not just somebody else speaking for different communities. So Ms. Brown is an ally, but there's a difference between having an ally at the court versus having the person who you're an ally to. Those are very important distinctions. And that's probably all I'm going to say about that for now.
Okay, thank you for that. Erin, do you have any follow-up questions you want to ask?
I do. I'd be interested if either of you, and I'd like both of you to actually answer this question, could speak to what you see as the single issue in Multnomah County Circuit Court that is working the worst. Ms. Gondor, we can start with you.
Single issue that's working, what the backlog is becoming, especially in civil cases, pretty intolerable. With Multnomah County had done a really good job versus some other counties. Sorry, my dog is having a day here. Versus some other counties to make sure cases come forward timely, unless you get a waiver because it's a complex case. All of those have now stopped. The cases are not going to trial. We're not even able to move them. So that is going to be a backlog for a long, long time, catching them on the criminal cases, but then making sure family law cases go through, and then dealing with all the civil cases. And the civil cases are just as important. It is when somebody's losing their house. It is when somebody is in a business dispute. It's somebody when they've lost their wages. So there are really important issues that are put in civil court that need to be addressed. And if we can't figure out a way to do it quickly, to maybe, jury trials need to happen. I don't think Zoom is the way to do them. So we need to come up with alternatives to make sure we can do more, because I think we are going to be in COVID for a few more months. And so that, and the cuts, I mean, COVID is coming, and so did cuts to the court, right? We lost our pro tem judges for a while. That created a backlog, and an additional backlog. And the judiciary is one of the easiest things to cut in the budget, even though they do so much work and so much service. So those are like crisis points that are going to come to head in the coming month and years.
Thank you. Ms. Brown, same question. What's the biggest problem you see in Multnomah County Circuit Court?
Yeah, so you mean besides that the building's going to crumble any day now, and thank goodness we have a new court coming, thanks to the work of the judges. No, in all seriousness, I think the biggest concern right now facing the courts, and indeed facing criminal defense attorneys, facing judges and prosecutors in the jail, is pretrial release, and what we do with people when the jails are overcrowded, and bail. All these issues wrapped around making sure that we have individuals that are showing up in court, but as well that they're not being held for nonviolent offenses where there is another way to make sure that they get to court. So this is an issue. The criminal docket is not only extremely busy in Multnomah County Circuit Court, but it's also it's a huge problem with the intersection that we have right now between disproportionate impacts on people of color and Black people, people suffering from mental illness who are being held in jail because they can't get a psychiatric review at the Oregon State Hospital within 7 days. And then you also have issues regarding homelessness and houselessness and how we make sure those people get to court. So all these issues are intertwined with the bail and with pretrial release. And I believe it's one of the many systemic issues that need to be looked at across the system, because the court's one part of it, the jail's another part of it, the budget, the county, all of those things need to be brought in and looked at as to how we can resolve this, because it's not getting better. So that's something that I know from talking to the judges that this is a problem.
I'm curious, so similar question, a little different, I suppose. Is there, and I'll start with you this time, Ms. Brown, is there a ruling in a trial in the past, say, 5 years that you look at as being the most significant ruling you've seen come out of the Multnomah County Circuit?
Most significant ruling. Well, I would say there's certainly been some impactful rulings that have come out. I think, and it's not necessarily out of Multnomah County, but going up through the appellate process and then through the Supreme Court. And I would say definitely cap on damages is a huge issue that's just recently in civil cases, on tort liability cases. And then also the decision to limit what the police can do when they're searching someone's garbage as needing a warrant for that. Those issues, that's just an example of both civil and criminal, have big implications on how policing do the work, as well as making sure how policing are held accountable. And then also how trial lawyers can do their work and bring cases. So yes, and the judges in Multnomah County have to handle both. I am very pleased that, I know that the Supreme Court puts out the Oregon Supreme Court puts out published notice of recent cases. And I think it's very important for judges to stay up with those issues, because it's an ever evolving landscape. The law is not static. And so we must continue to evolve with it. And those are just a couple examples, but I know there's many that have been impactful besides those.
Thank you. Ms. Gondor, same question.
And Aaron, was your question from the circuit court or the appellate court, or?
I'm just looking from both of you to get a sense of what rulings either in the circuit court or in the appellate court regionally have struck you as significant. It helps me understand your thinking.
Yeah, I mean, caps on damages has always been a big issue. It's a issue that's been fought left and right. There has been an expansion on allowing more damages to be awarded, not in all cases. I think there's going to be more cases coming up and down on that. For some of the stuff that we're going to be seeing, some of the coverage cases that have come from insurance coverage cases, I am going to talk about insurance, but a lot of people don't get compensated unless there is insurance to compensate them. And with the fires and the business interruption and commercial lease breaking, like I've just been helping a nonprofit who had to get out of their lease because they are a school and they have not had anybody in there. So some of the coverage cases that have come down from the Supreme Court, expanding coverage or talking about different ways of allowing coverage in CGL policies, which are the commercial policies that most businesses have, is going to be important to see, because it is a way that actually people will get compensated, because if there's no coverage, there's going to be a bankruptcy or just no payment of any jury verdict.
Thanks, both of you. That was very helpful. Those are my questions for now.
Great.
Yeah, I think we're good here. I don't have any additional questions either, but we have your contact info, so when we're writing these endorsements, we might reach out just to fact check. What?
Fun question.
Yeah. Oh, fun question. Oh, Aaron, I forgot what it was. Will you ask?
I'm happy to ask the fun question.
Oh no.
Official fun guy. The fun question this time around, which is a help to get to know you kind of question, is what's the most awkward moment you've had in a Zoom interview? Happy to let either one of you go first.
You know what? I'll go. Other than this interview, right? It's been very awkward.
Present company excluded.
No, of course. It's just, the fear of what this interview was going to be. Really, it's forgetting that you're up close and bottom close and having pajama bottoms, and getting up to let my beautiful doggy, who loves to sit here, get out because he started barking. And yeah, that was not great. The other ones are not awkward is when technology fails and you are in the middle of an interview and you're like, okay, where's my phone and where's my other computer and what can I do to get back on the interview?
Great. Ms. Brown, same question.
Yeah, so you're about ready to experience it right now. So I told my husband and my son to stay away until 5 o'clock. Well, fair enough, it's 5:12. And so,
You said you had no meeting.
I know, I said I had no meetings. So yeah, so this is Miles, and I promised him no meetings tonight. So yeah, but interruption from children and dogs, like Rima, I'm also a dog lover. And yeah, dogs barking, running up and down the stairs during mediations over Zoom. But yeah, life happens. Life happens on the other side of Zoom. So
I love kitties too, not just dogs. We have a
me
range
too.
of animals in our house
I understand.
and children.
If it's any comfort, there's been a small cat.
Hello, kitty.
Very
Oh,
cute. What's his name?
what's the kitty's name?
Harper.
Very.
Right here.
Oh,
I think the people who are going, or the creatures that are going to suffer the most when COVID is gone is
Oh,
when
Yeah.
we leave.
oh, I know. We just got a second cat in part because we're afraid that once COVID ends, these poor animals are going to be so lonely.
Yeah, I think Prozac for animals is going to be on the high up. So this one, anyway.
very true.
Now when I leave them, they tear things out.
Yes.
Both of you have been very patient with us for this going on longer than we had put into the time frame. We're going to let you go. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for making this a hard decision.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your interest in this race. I hope everyone votes all the way down the ballot.
Here's to that.
Thank you.
Thanks
And
very
you
much.
go have a great dinner and enjoy the rest of your night.
Yes.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks.
And we may post, just so you know, we may post segments of this before we issue the endorsement so that people can get to know you a little bit.
Okay. Sounds good.
Take
All right.
care. Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
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 Mama, isn't that nice?
All right.
Can you turn the record off, Tess?
Oh, yeah. And no. Not used to Zoom.